Hey, you're watching May's Homestead Chronicles, and today we are going to be showing you how to plant one of the most amazing survival crops, the potato. So guys, first off, we're going to tell you what kind of potatoes we like to use. So where we like to source potatoes, there's three different options typically that we use. We like to either use feed store, which is going to sell your seed potatoes. This is the most popular option. They work very well, especially if you can get a good quality seed potato. The other one is going to be just going to a local grocery store, okay? Just make sure that you always get organic potatoes. These potatoes are going to not have the growth inhibitors, which is what you don't want. The other option is going to be a local market, which is honestly, this is going to be the best option aside from your regular grocery store, and you're still going to be looking for an organic option. So sometimes we do a mix of things. We'll do some of those, we'll do some from the grocery store, but the two best options are always going to be your market, or they're going to be your feed store where you're going to get seed potatoes. So as far as sprouting them, or you could say getting your potatoes to start chitting, don't stress out about that, okay? So we've got ones that are different stages. Like this one right here is really developed. That just means that it's going to have a head start on the growing season. So this one here is another one that's, a little less, not as big a chits on it. So anywhere where you have these little things like this, those are called your potato eyes. That's where your chits usually are going to grow from. And so I want to show you that you can even plant a potato like this. You can see here there's a chit that's starting from that little eye, as well as here. When it comes to the size of your potato that's going to grow under the ground, that's going to depend on what you do with your potato before you plant it. So what I mean by that is, if you plant a potato like this whole in the ground, you're going to have a more smaller potatoes and you might have a bigger harvest, more potatoes, but they might be smaller. Now if you come in and you make your cuts, you can cut them down the middle. I like to do no more than half the potato typically. If it's a really long one like this, then maybe you can cut it into three pieces, okay? But the main thing is you want to have 2 to 3 chits on each of those cuts that you're doing. All right, as far as cutting the potatoes, if you're wondering how we scab them and how we go about that, so there's 2 different ways we do it, okay? If you're going to cut them, and let's say you don't have enough time, you're pressed on time. So what you can do is make sure that, like I said, you got like 2 to 3 chits on each cut. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is more than enough. So we're going to come through here, and I'm just going to cut, making sure that I don't cut through one of the eyes. Okay, that's it. And then you're going to come and dip it in ash like this. This is if you're pressed on time. This is going to prevent rotting and disease and things like that. We've done this many times. It works really well. Then the other way you do it is simply cut the potato, put it into a bag for at least 24 hours. I like to do maybe 2 days if you have that time. And a paper bag's great because it holds the moisture in. You can leave the top of the bag open and it'll scab over and you don't have to worry about the mold. If you close it up, it could get moldy, but that's the best way to do it. You want it to have a little bit of moisture. If it's too dry, it won't scab properly. When it comes to tools, these are the tools that we like to use. So number one, for helping to aerate the soil, kind of break things up, we like to use a broad fork. You can also use a pitchfork or a spading fork, work just as well, just not going to cover as much area. The next tool that we like to use is going to be hard rake for clearing the beds and cleaning things up. And then as far as digging our trenches in our areas where we're going to plant the potatoes, we like to use a wheel hoe, or just if you don't have a wheel hoe, you can use a just regular typical hoe. Be sure to watch all the way through because we will also be showing you how we do a no-dig method, which requires no trenching or anything like that. All right, so we've got a few perennials here. These are catnip. I don't need them here. They just started spreading by seed. I'm just taking them, putting them in some pots and putting them in a different area. Normally we would not pull them up by the root like this. We would cut them at ground level to help feed our soil, but these roots are going to get in the way of our potatoes. Another thing that we like to plant side by side with potatoes is onions. This is not required, it's optional, but we think it is worth it. And ever since we started, we have not gone back. We always plant onions with our potatoes. They are a natural pest control and they help reduce fungal diseases. So what we're gonna do is soak them in water while we're prepping our potato bed. I happen to have a pond, so I'm going to put pond water in here. This is a great fertilizer. It'll give them a good, nice start. You don't have to have pond water. You can just use regular water. All right, while these onions are soaking in the water, my son's gonna go ahead and work on weeding out this bed. This is a tool that I didn't mention at the beginning of the video because it's not really required, but it definitely is a nice tool, especially for like no-dig approaches, which is what we try to do as much as possible out here. So it's got this blade like this, and then just a wooden handle on it. If you know what this is called, leave a comment in the comment section. Now he's gonna take the hard rake and just kind of get some of this old debris off the bed just so we can have some soil that's easier to work with. Now we are on to aerating the soil. We like to use a broad fork instead of a tiller, which tends to mutilate the worms in the soil as well as break up all the soil food web. So the fork is great because it also prevents the hard pan, which tillers tend to also create. And it's just breaking up the soil enough to where we can work with it a little bit better, and it's keeping those microorganisms a little more happy. Do yourself a favor, don't ever plant Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes in your garden near, I mean, honestly, it's better to just plant them in your pasture out in the yard. Don't put them in your garden. They'll take over. They are invasive, and I mean, it's a really nice survival crop. I mean, look at this harvest already that we've got. That this isn't even where we meant them to be, okay? They've traveled across.
Dad, we're supposed to be planting potatoes, not harvesting Jerusalem artichokes.
I know, right? Jeez, look at all these. It's always great when you find these little guys in your soil as you're going along. That's a good sign of good soil. All right, my son has gone through and plowed twice now. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. We're going for, 5-6 inches roughly. This is the conventional method, okay? So obviously we were breaking up ground here a little bit. This is gonna be one of the most simple ways to plant the potatoes if you don't have the materials for no-dig. No-dig is gonna require that extra compost and mulch that a lot of people might not have. So you can use a wheel hoe like this, or you can use a regular standard hoe and just make your trench for your potatoes just like this. All right, so now what my girls are doing here is they've started the row with a potato, and then they're using this stick that we've measured that is 12 inches, and they're using that as a jig, as a little guide to put the next potato. And so they'll just continue to do this all the way down the row. So it's really great for someone who's brand new to this. I've gotten to where I can just eyeball it at this point, but this works really good for those who have not done this before, especially kids. One thing I want to mention here is notice how they're only putting one whole potato in here instead of cutting it. We found that it works really great just planting them whole when they're about this size. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and add our compost first. Some people like to add their compost at the end. We like to go ahead and put it in first because I want to get those nutrients to those spuds right away, so they have all the nutrients they need to have a really good start. You can do it the other way too, where you just put the dirt on first and then compost. This is what we found to work very effectively for us. And we'll make sure to do a follow-up video to this as well, so we can show you how we mound them as the season goes on. The next step is we're going to start bringing just a little bit of soil, not much. I actually like to just partially bury the potatoes, let them kind of grow in, and as they grow, I'll bring more soil around. All right, so my son is showing you guys that we're doing this middle row with no compost because sometimes you don't have compost. And like I said, it's okay. Just get them buried. Don't overthink it. All right, so we've saved this portion of this bed for our no-dig. And also notice how we have our lines here for where we're gonna be planting our onions. That's gonna be about 6 inches from where I'm putting my potato, more or less. It might be a little bit more. And then we have our row of potatoes down this aisle here. And so we have our next line for onions here, and then the potatoes. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you how easy this is. We're just gonna take our potatoes, set them down on the ground. The sprouts are facing upward. Got our little spacer here. We're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna lightly put them in the soil. I mean, not much. And just keep going all the way down. As you can see here, this method is going to be a lot less labor intensive because we're not having to plow our line and all that. We're just setting our potatoes here on the surface, and then we'll be covering with compost. Now we're taking our compost and we're just going to cover these completely with compost. Now, if you have straw or a wood mulch, you can use that later to build up as they grow. All right, I'm just going to show you real quick that you can use leaves, which is a free material. You can just pick up bags of leaves in town or even in your yard. You can use those as a mulch. So we got this bed, we got the compost all ready to go. I'm just going to put the leaves on top of that as a mulch. We are now on to the onions. You can do onions by seed. Earlier on the season, we do both. We've done seed. We also do the bunches of onions like this. You can get these at feed stores for reasonable cost when you go to get your seed potatoes. They're usually right there. Even like stores like Lowe's and Tractor Supply will also have onions like this. In this growing zone specifically, we use short date onions, okay? If you live in a different region, it might require you to get long day onions. Typically, your stores are going to provide the right onions for your area. All right, so like we mentioned earlier, you're going to make sure that your onions are about 6 to 8 inches away from where you planted your potatoes. Potato line is right here, and we already measured it. You can get a measuring tape and do all that before you get into this, before you plant your potatoes. So I like to plant the onions where I know that I'm going to have enough space for them to get about this big, okay? Online it says like 2 inches at the most. That is too close in my opinion. I wouldn't go any closer than about 3 to 4 inches. Give your onions plenty of space to grow nice and big, okay? So we're gonna put them in like this, and it's okay if you bury quite a bit of that bulb. You can move that dirt away later. I found that if you only bury the roots, which is what is recommended online by a lot of sources, if you do it that way, they tend to fall over in heavy winds. You probably noticed earlier, I'm just popping them in there. I kind of eyeball it, but for the kids, again, or for anyone who's new to this, the little bitty jigs like this, I mean, we're just using pieces of, sticks that are about the same length, about 3 to 4 inches, and that way they know where to put the next ones. All right, now we're just adding a little compost. This is also not required. I will say though that onions and potatoes both are decent feeders. So if you can do it, it's better, okay? If you can give them food, you're always gonna have better results. All right, so a lot of this compost that we're using already has chicken manure in it, which is really good, it's just something that the onions and potatoes love. Any type of manure, even if you got cow manure, horse manure. The only thing about horse manure and all these other manures is you got to make sure that those animals were not eating hay that has been treated with Grazon. Grazon is a nightmare in your garden. All right, another way that we like to fertilize and kind of feed these plants is to use our pond water. Rainwater is also nice. If you collect rainwater, that's another good nitrogen. But I'm just gonna water these onions in with this pond water. It's gonna give them a real nice start. And then we can also go over our potatoes with it, just to kind of inoculate the soil here and kind of feed the soil organisms. You little stinkers, get out of here. I left that gate open. Get out of here. Out, 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 out. Little stinkers. All right, so guys, lastly, you're gonna make sure that you water everything in nice and thoroughly. And you wanna keep this bed pretty wet, okay? I mean, not like sopping wet, you wanna keep it damp until it starts getting established. But hey, if you'd like to see how we make homemade compost, I'll put a link to that right up here. We have a video. We have actually a couple of different videos, but I'll put one up here for you to check out. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to see more of our content. And we'll see you guys in the next video. All right? God bless y'all. Bye. Okay, tell me that does not look alienish to you. I mean, look at that. I'm getting tired. Let's just do this. Whew, that was much easier. You know what? Maybe it'll work with the compost too. Whoa!